The Philadelphia Flyers and Calgary Flames make a big trade. The New York Islanders are making their case with a 6-game win streak, and the Tampa Bay Lightning shutout of the LA Kings may also have playoff implications. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone, and thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm here each and every Friday with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders. You can find us over on YouTube or anywhere you listen to podcasts to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Gil, how are we doing this Friday?
We are doing. I can't believe we're at the end of January, and I can't believe the Islanders have won 6 straight games. So, wow.
Yeah, I feel like in some ways it's a blessing and in some ways it's a curse, but stuff keeps happening with our teams. So we're able to talk about it on the Friday show here on Locked On NHL. And of course, we do have to start with the big Philadelphia Flyers trade with the Calgary Flames. So the Flyers sent forwards Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost to Calgary in exchange for Andrei Kuzmenko, Jakob Pelletier, and 2 draft picks, a second rounder in this year's draft, and then a 7th round pick in 2028. And I refuse to believe that year actually exists. So we're going to table that one for now. But, we'll get to the players. The second round draft pick this year, it's interesting for the Flyers just because that is now a 7th pick that the Flyers have in the first 2 rounds of this year's draft. That is a lot of capital, which may be used toward something either prior to the trade deadline or at the draft. So a lot of possibilities there. And that's why I mention it. I think for the Flyers here, both Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost are good players. They have had their issues with head coach John Tortorella. Both of them have experienced the Torts benching situation over the last couple of years. And I think, Morgan Frost is a solid NHL center. I think he has a lot of face-off skill. I think he brings a lot of creativity to his game. And I think, there just hasn't been the right spot for him on this particular team.
Yeah, he just doesn't seem to, I guess, fit into Torts' vision or where he wants to put him in the lineup. It just doesn't seem to be working. And, moving on, I think, made the most sense. And, John Tortorella is not always easy for everybody to play for. It takes a certain amount of adjustment, and not everybody eventually fits in.
Yeah, and I think with Joel Farabee, I think the relationship has gotten better over time. There's still some benching going on, but I think that's directly related to Farabee's play. Like he has struggled a little bit this season and had, some good moments and then gone long periods of time without scoring. And I think that, the combination of that maybe a change of scenery will help him, along with the fact that, he's got 3 years left on his contract at $5 million per year. This gives the Flyers the opportunity, along with, Morgan Frost is an RFA. So, his next contract could be looking in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 million. And so you add that with the $5 million of Joel Farabee, maybe it was time to clear the deck and the Flyers can shop around either again at this trade deadline or in the off season for either a 1C or a high-end defenseman, which is something that Danny Briere has been talking about for a considerable amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, it does free up a lot of options for the Flyers. Short term, though, how does this affect their possible playoff run?
I mean, it weakens them at center, that's for sure. And right now, we have Ryan Poehling is still out from the hit from your New York Islanders from last week that we talked about.
Yeah.
But I think, or was that 2 weeks ago? Time's a flat circle. I don't even know now. But um so that is going to be an issue. They can slot Scott Lawton over at center temporarily, which is probably what they'll do, and they'll be fine until Paling is able to come back. And they're just not great centers. They're okay centers. It's Sean Couturier and then a bunch of guys doing their best.
Right.
And but can the Flyers live with that for the rest of the season? Absolutely. Like I
Mhm.
just don't have any issue with that. Now, as far as, on the Flames side of things, wanna make sure we we see what is going on there. I do think they're getting 2 very good forwards that will have a lot of opportunity there and will get a lot of ice time. That's good. Jakob Pelletier, is a very young player, and I think this is a good change of scenery for him. It wasn't sure if he was gonna stick with the Flames this season. So I think that's good for him. Andrei Kuzmenko has struggled as well. So this is a good change of scenery. Now he is on an expiring contract this year. And the fact that he has been struggling, he's been involved in a trade. So it's clear that somebody is done with him. He's got to play for his next contract. So he has a lot of incentive to actually be successful in Philadelphia.
He does. There's a lot of incentive there. And then maybe as a bonus, the fact is that Kuzmenko is friends with Matvey Michkov. They know each other from Russia and the KHL, and maybe they help each other by, their familiarity and their friendship. They can help each other play well down the stretch as well.
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. So, we'll see how that develops and, where they slot into the lineups here. Now, as far as Kuzmenko and his potential to, re-sign with the Flyers, it's definitely a wait and see. He's older too, so it may not be part of the long-term plan that Danny Briere has in terms of trying to get younger and build a core from within. I think that, there will be the opportunity there, but will he resign? I would tend to doubt it. But I think Peltier, has a real strong opportunity with the Flyers here.
Yeah, and with Kuzmenko, he showed he can score.
Mhm.
In his first NHL season, he had an unbelievable shooting percentage, though. So I don't know how sustainable, 39
Right.
goals a year is going to be. But if he can give you 25 to 30, it's certainly worth it. And, would he be more open to a 2 or 3 year contract as opposed to a 5, 6, or 7 year contract? That's another question that, may get him to re-sign with Philly if the Flyers want to give him that kind of a deal.
Right. And, as of now, he's only got 4 goals and 11 assists in 37 games with the Flames this season. Definitely a drop in production from last season. And I think that when a guy gets moved like twice, in consecutive years, there is a question there to be sure. But I find that, sometimes these guys like just need to find the right spot and maybe Philadelphia is it, maybe it isn't, but he certainly will have an opportunity here. And I agree that there will be, some benefit to like, I don't know how friendly he is with Mitchkov. They know each other and they played together. I cannot speak to whether they like each other or get along at all. That is, to be determined. But yeah, it's a really interesting deal for both teams as Calgary is, trying to make something of this season. I think that Farabee and Frost will give them a chance to do that.
Yeah, and they surprised a lot of people by being in the thick of this playoff race right now, and I think that this trade gives the Flames an opportunity to try to nail it down and make the postseason. And it's an interesting decision by Flames management to make a deal for the short term right now.
Yeah, I definitely think so because, there's a lot of people saying they should have done a more slow rebuild, right?
Right.
And kind of build for sustainability and this is there'll be a big question as to whether these two guys will be a part of the Flames' future. But in the meantime, your New York Islanders have put together a 6-game winning streak, partially to my chagrin, but we're going to live with that and talk about it coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I recently used Game Time Picks to find tickets for an NFL playoff game. Browsing through the deals was simple, and I found great value for all the seats around the venue. The Super Deal was especially impressive. It offers the best value for the event, and the app's features like seat views before you buy and all-in pricing with no surprise fees at checkout made the experience smooth and reliable. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
All right, Gil. So your New York Islanders have put together this 6-game winning streak. And I think, there's some interesting factors going into this. And, I want to start with, the injuries that have really affected the team. But then there's also some new guys. So talk about like who's missing and then how the new guys fit in so far.
Well, you have injuries right now within the last week or so to defenseman Ryan Pollock and Noah Dobson. Those are two of your
Yeah.
top four defensemen on the depth chart. And yet, what Lou Lamoriello did is he ends up signing Tony DeAngelo, who was just terminated, mutually agreed to terminate his deal in the KHL. And then you trade a 5th-round pick in 2026, I believe it was, for defenseman Scott Perunovich from the St. Louis Blues. And yet, what happened here, these two guys are better skaters with the puck than the two guys who got hurt. And in particular, Noah Dobson has been very shaky in his own zone, turned the puck over a lot, and it ended up causing a lot of problems where the Islanders would spend, a minute and a half backed up in their own zone and just not being able to clear the puck, or Dobson didn't pick up his man and didn't play positional defense. Now, with these two new defensemen in there, these guys are good at skating the puck out. Their passing is better. The Islanders are transitioning from defense to offense much better. And the amazing thing about this 6-game winning streak, the Islanders have given up 2 goals or less in all 6 games.
Honestly, that's the most surprising part of it to me because, I've obviously seen Tony DeAngelo play for the Flyers and we've seen him, and defense is nowhere near his skill set,
No,
right?
no.
And Perunovich, like you said, more of an offensive defenseman as well. And so the fact that their defense is better with less defensively skilled defensemen is absolutely bizarro to me.
It is, but what these guys do is they do help get the puck out of the zone. They may
Yeah.
not be the most physical defensive guys. They may not even be the best positionally sound defensive guys, but at least they know how to get the puck out of the zone and transition to offense. And that was a huge problem for the New York Islanders in the first half of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that I definitely saw in their game that changed. And, the Flyers have played the Islanders a bunch recently. So I've gotten to see them up close. And that's definitely been a huge factor. I think the other factor is that the Islanders seem to be just shooting better and like picking their shots better than they were before.
Well, I think part of that is also that everybody's healthy. Matthew Barzal back in the lineup. Anthony Duclair back in the lineup. I mean, Duclair is still kind of struggling and he is playing through an injury, but getting, some of your guys back and healthy definitely gives you a boost offensively. And then you're getting more offensive contributions from guys like Simon Holmstrom, and Anders Lee has really revived his career. He already has more goals this season in 50 games than he did in all of last season. So you're getting more offensive contributions. And then when Matthew Barzal comes back, that gets Bo Horvat cooking because their chemistry is very, very good. So,
Right.
it's sort of a little chain reaction that's been going on. Now, the other thing is, and this is a little bit of a concern, backup goalie Marcus Hogberg also got injured. Semyon Varlamov remains on IR. The Islanders are now down to their fourth goalie to back up Ilya Sorokin. So Sorokin has been playing very well, but you can't burn him out. And they have two back-to-backs between now and Four Nations. So it's going to be interesting to see whether Patrick Waugh rides Sorokin with the danger of burning him out come March and April, or whether he is willing to take the gamble of having the fourth goalie in your organization who has been average at best, behind a very bad Bridgeport team, whether he'll get a start or two between now and Four Nations.
Yeah, that was actually the next thing I was gonna ask you about was the goaltending given that injury situation. I know Hogberg looked fantastic in net and was, I think, rumored to be one of the potential replacements for Team Sweden in Four Nations prior to that injury. And Sorokin has looked phenomenal in net as of late. But yeah, you cannot like ride him like a two back-to-backs like that. And, I happen to have also seen the most recent Bridgeport game because they were playing the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, the Flyers affiliate, and the Phantoms defeated Bridgeport 9-2
Yeah.
in that game.
Yeah.
It was not pretty. It was not pretty at all.
They have the worst
And
record in the AHL right now,
they do.
Bridgeport.
Yeah, they
And
do. And so I can see where your concern comes from in terms of the goaltending down there. And what the options are. Now, given this win streak, given this new lease on life, is it possible that Lou tries to go out there and get another goaltender?
yeah, I think that is a possibility. I could see them, either making a deal at some point this weekend or after this weekend. Maybe they play Jakob Skarek, who is the fourth goalie in the organization that I was referring to, in one of the two games this weekend, and then they, bring in somebody on a short-term situation. Lou Lamoriello is very good at finding short-term solutions. The way he builds the team in the big picture, I am not always thrilled with
Right.
at all. But these little, finding a Tony DeAngelo, which, cost you nothing except the actual minimum NHL minimum, prorated contract for the rest of the year. That was a great move as far as the short term
Sure.
goes, if DeAngelo behaves himself.
Right. That is a big if, but you have a short window to deal with leading up to the end of this season here.
Right.
So maybe you'll get the best of him and not the worst of him. Now, just as far as this win streak, like how sustainable do you see it being?
Look, they're not going to, there's 32 games left. They're not going 32-0-0. Okay.
Right,
The
right.
key is this: can they sustain a consistent level of play that would allow them to win, get 60 to 65% of the points left on the schedule? If they can do that, they're in this playoff hunt. The problem is that there's like 8 other teams who are also in the playoff hunt. So you could win, you could earn 60, 65% of your points and still miss if one of these other teams or two of these other teams are just as hot. So I still think in the big picture at the trade deadline, the Islanders should be moving Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri, and some of the other veterans. But Lou Lamoriello doesn't like to rebuild or retool. And my concern is he may still now go out and try to re-sign to an extension guys like Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri.
Yeah, I think they would be remiss if they didn't deal Brock Nelson at the deadline and get a haul for him, which I absolutely believe they could. So that is absolutely the way to go. But if you're in the hunt, you're in the hunt, and Lou will Lou, as you
Lou's
like
gonna
to
Lou,
say.
absolutely.
All right. In the meantime, the Tampa Bay Lightning shut out the LA Kings 3-0 last night. And is that going to show some signs for both of those teams in the aforementioned playoff race? We're going to talk about that coming up next. So Andrei Vasilevsky put up a 28 save shutout for the Tampa Bay Lightning against the LA Kings. And I think, different conferences, but both teams are in this weird, like borderline situation here where you have the LA Kings losing their third game in a row here. And they are in the third spot in the Pacific Division at 58 points. But you've got two teams in the aforementioned Calgary Flames who just made a huge move to try and, improve themselves and make a more solid playoff run here, and the Vancouver Canucks, who have, been struggling and been up and down, but they have won 3 games in a row. So they're both within a couple of points of the LA Kings here. Like, should we be worried about LA?
I'd be definitely concerned. Yeah. I mean, 2-7-1 in their last 10. You mentioned the 4-game losing streak. Injuries definitely a part of the problem in LA. But here's the crazy thing about the Kings. At home, they are 15-3-1. And on the road, they're 3 games under NHL 500, 11-14-5. That is such a big disparity.
Yeah, it really is. And, I think that there's a lot of things going on with the Kings right now, and that has led to a little bit of their struggles, but they're a team that's sort of been consistently like in that top group, and at the time of year where you have to start peaking, like they are doing the opposite of that.
Yeah, it's bad timing for sure because they have been consistently a solid team over the last, decade, really. But now this is not the right time for them to be struggling, and it is. They're going to have to use, I think, some of this veteran leadership with Andrei Kopitar really sort of helping them back. And now, Drew Doughty is back in the lineup, but is he back up to speed yet? But I think you got to rely on some of those experienced veterans who have won cups in LA to sort of help lift this team through this difficult stretch that they're going through. And maybe Four Nations gives them a chance to regroup.
Yeah, I think so. And in that game, Anderson left the game and did not return. So there's something to that as well. He's been kind of a middle contribution defenseman there, but I think that it's going to be tough for the Kings heading into this stretch, and I do think that the break is something that should help them regroup here. Now, on the other side of the fence for the Tampa Bay Lightning, they could make a statement to get back into that top 3 here.
They could. And, it's out there for them. Look, this is a team they had to get used to the idea that there is no Steven Stamkos anymore in their lineup. I think they've done a good job of sort of adjusting and putting that behind them. And there's still a lot of talent on this team. I mean, your
Right.
top line right now is Braden Point, Jake Gunsel, and Nikita Kucherov. You can do a lot worse than that trio as your number one line.
Absolutely. And, they're sitting in that first wild card spot, same number of points as Columbus in the 2 spot, although they have one less game played at this point. So that works to their advantage. They've been uneven, but they are a talented team, like you said, who can score a lot of goals. They have Vasilevsky in net, the aforementioned shutout that he just had. And they do get scoring from lots of different places. Brandon Hagel had 2 goals in that game against the Kings, in what was an extremely physical game, right? Which is something they can handle and something that works to their advantage. But they had to absorb 29 hits from the LA Kings in that game, but still managed to throw 18 of their own in that game. Tampa had a lot of shots, a lot of shot attempts. The Kings had to block 18 of them, and it still didn't get them anywhere in as far as getting on the board. So, there are a lot of strengths to this team, and despite the fact that the Ottawa Senators sitting in 3rd place in the division are a point ahead of them with 3 wins in a row, I still think the Bolts are going to be competitive here.
I think they are. And you look, one other thing, their goal differential is plus 35, which is, pretty strong for a team that is right now in a wild card spot. And, the fact of the matter is Tampa Bay is only 6 points behind Florida for first place in the Atlantic Division. And yet they're only 1 point ahead of Boston for that last wild card spot. So if they get hot, they can even try to, put some pressure on the top 3 or even the first place team in the division. If they fall back, they could easily find themselves out of the playoffs. They are at a crossroads right now.
Yeah, I think that is the interesting part of it on the Tampa side is because of that mush of, 6 teams that could end up absolutely anywhere in the standings. I think there, earlier there was sort of there was a more clear separation between the top 3 and the rest of, the group. But I think on the Atlantic Division side, that division is less of a factor there, right?
Yeah, yeah, and they are still in the division race.
They are. And, I think one of the other things is the Tampa Bay Lightning are consistently kind of in the top 10 in the league in terms of getting, scoring chances for an expected goals percentage and whatnot. They have the second highest high danger chances 4% in the league at 5-on-5. And so, they're not just power play specialists here either. So I think they have it within them to make a run here.
They do. The question is consistency. Can they play the type of game they play consistently well? And you look at them at the overall numbers. Tampa Bay is top 10 in goals scored. They're 3rd in the league. They're 7th in goals against. The power play is 5th in the league. The penalty kill is 10th. Those numbers alone indicate they should be higher in the standings than where they are.
Yep, absolutely. Um, and we're going to hear a little bit from our Locked On Lightning host about that game last night and what it means to them coming up right now.
With dominant performances from Brandon Hagel and Andrei Vasilevsky, the Tampa Bay Lightning took a 3-0 victory over the Los Angeles Kings. Vazzy had 28 saves after missing Tuesday's game with an illness, but he showed no signs of being sick. A truly dominant performance from Vasilevsky, and Brandon Hagel was about the same way on offense. A beautiful goal that actually came off a Vasilevsky assist to start off the scoring in the first period, and that put Vasilevsky in a tie with Jonathan Quick for the 26th most goaltender assists in NHL history. Brandon Hagel with 2 goals and an assist tonight. The assist coming on an empty netter after he just flung the puck up the ice on a giveaway. Trying to score, but Anthony Cirelli was there to pick it back up. This may have been Hagel's best game of the season, scoring both goals for Tampa Bay in even strength, and it was truly one of the best all-around defensive performances for Tampa, as John Cooper said, that the Bolts truly defended to win this game.
So that pretty much says it in terms of, what the Bolts are capable of here, and we'll see what they do moving forward. That will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. Gil, of course, will be back on Monday talking to hosts from around the network on what's going on with their teams, and we will be back next Friday to talk about whatever big deals may have happened next Thursday. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert. Get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great weekend, everyone.